Nice. All right. Well, I am in Sydney, Australia today. So I did commit to trying to do all of our podcasts in person, which is a goal that we set earlier on.
Yep.
And I actually put that goal in Empiraa.
Oh,
that was one of the goals that I said. Well, so we'll talk about.
What a segue. Love it.
What a segue. But so I'm in Sydney, Australia today. I'm joined by Ash Brown. So Ash, thank you for coming on the Rental Journal podcast.
Thanks, Mark. I've been listening since almost day one, which is good. So it's always good to be asked to come on to one of these things and talk about my former industry.
Awesome. So most of the time I'm here trying to explain how we can bring more people into the equipment rental industry. Yeah. And this is a unique podcast where I'm talking about someone that's left the equipment rental industry.
Yeah, I got out.
But you do have a very interesting story, and not many people understand what it takes to start a software business.
Yeah.
Or a tech business. And so you've got a lot of experiences that I want to talk about and how you got to that landing. But before we get that, let's jump to the very beginning on how you first got into the equipment rental industry.
This was way back in 2004, I think. God, yeah, it would have been. I was in hospitality for when I moved to Melbourne when I was 18, and I did that and did hospitality management and loved it, but it's a single man's game, and when you have a wife and a young daughter, priorities change. And then I was applying for jobs because I wanted to be a sales rep, because sales reps got commission and a free car. That was my thing. I get a free car, and my car was a heap of junk. It was an old EA Falcon, and I went, I need a new car, and I couldn't afford one, so I thought I'd get into sales. And I did end up in sales. I ended up applying for a job at National Hire. Andrew Dixon was the state sales manager, and Dicko interviewed me and gave me the pen and said, "Sell me the pen." This is before Wolf of Wall Street. This is well before that, and that's why when I saw Wolf of Wall Street, hang on a minute, he's obviously. And I'm like, how did he steal that? It's so he sold me the pen, and then I obviously had stuff all in the way of experience of sales at the time, and I'm like, oh, it's a great pen. It's big. It holds well. And he goes, you didn't ask me why I needed the pen. And I went, But he saw something in me and then referred me to Steve Taylor, who's now actually the Chief Executive Officer at Adaptalive, and Chris Tangy. And they interviewed me and said, hey, do you want to come on board as a sales cadet? And I went, yeah, no worries. And I was living in Taylor's Lake, so to put it in perspective, it's completely northwest of Melbourne, and it was National Hire was based in Clayton, which is 70 odd k's away. Anyway, so I said, oh look, I could, but I need a fuel card or fuel money. I'm not that rich, and so they said, here's a $5,000 fuel card and e-tag. So basically I started just working at National Hire and selling VMS boards.
Wow.
Just getting on, so got on the early days of Google, sit there, had a spreadsheet, had all the Godfreys, all the Harvey Normans, all the good guys, all the JB Hi-Fis, and had all their numbers and just ring. Hey, it's Ash from National Hire. So I speak to the store manager. I've noticed you've got a VMS board out the front of your store. Are we able to put ours up there next week? And they're like, oh well, I've got to deal with Samson Hire. So sorry, Samson, but and we just discounted the crap out of the boards, because they had hundreds of boards just sitting there, just doing nothing. And I remember Phil Ryan, his name was, River Guy, but he hated me because I was getting all these VMS boards out, because we were doing it instead of $300 a weekend, we're doing it $75 a weekend, because they wanted to increase utilisation. And they're flying, and everyone's like, oh, you got a flair for this. And then I just ended up working through the branch network and worked at the High Lift, which was National Hire's version of Access, and worked then, and the person, there was a guy there and working as a rep, and he got sacked, and I remember this is 12 months in, and I walked into Dicko's office and I said, Dicko, I'm the right person for this job. I know I know I can do it. I'm the man. He goes, shh. Here's your contract, here's your keys, we're going to give you the job anyway, you idiot. And I'm like, all right, cool. And so I just started that. And the worst part about that was 12 months into I wasn't even 12 months. God, it was about 6 months in the Coates National merger happened. And I was lucky enough, I think I was one of 3 or 4 in Melbourne that got reps that got brought over from National over to Coates. And I stayed at Coates for probably, I think it was 3 to 6 months. Nothing wrong with Coates. Absolutely, my time there was fine. There was no issues. Just it wasn't my environment. It was very political, I suppose. But it's politically charged whenever there's a merger.
Yeah,
two
big companies.
Well, whenever there's a merger, you've got 2 big companies. You've got National Hire buying Coates, but Coates being the Coates infrastructure, and rightfully so, because Coates was the bigger company. It's just that National had the money to buy Coates, and there was a lot. It was pissing competitions and whatever else. And anyway, long story cut short, I left there, then took 12 months away from Hire, went and worked at another company, and answered an ad one day for 1300 Temp Fence, and that was my shoe. 1300 Temp Fence, and there was this little tiny lad. Do you want to work for a progressive temporary fencing company in Tullamarine, looking for a sales rep? And with the company I was with at that time, I just wasn't really happy with. And my wife sent it. She cut it out, actually. She printed it off and cut it out and gave it to me. He goes, "Here is a company in Tullamarine." I went, "Oh, yeah, right." So I sent my resume in. Then I remember they interviewed me on the Monday. And by the Wednesday, I had the job. I was like, "This is cool." So that's sort of how I got. That's the short version of that was 6 years, and then there's obviously 10 years past that. So
So you're probably going to piss a lot of people off by saying that you are discounting the rental rates to increase utilisation.
100%. Sorry, it would have pissed me off about 10 years later. But I saw what I understood what they were trying to do. It made sense. You've got these $30,000 units just sitting there doing nothing, and you're trying to get $300 a weekend for them, but they're not moving. It's basic economics. Like, if it's not moving at $300, and it's sitting there and it's just aging and costing you more in maintenance, you're better off moving down. Probably $75 is probably a plus, obviously transport, but it was $149 for transport. Still weird things you remember, and but it made sense. There's no point having something sit there and you're not earning your money.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've always joked about having like almost a debate podcast once. Yeah. To have someone that's pro discount and against discount. Maybe you're going to be the person I get on there as the debate. I've got a person that's anti-discount, and I can bring him on in my former boss at 1300. But in all honesty, my point's always been, it doesn't mean you pull your pants down, because that term gets used all the time. There's a difference between pulling your pants down and realising an opportunity. And if it's an opportunity like a Godfrey's, where they're putting up 50 stores every weekend for 6 months at $75 a weekend, well, it makes sense. Do you know what I mean? That just makes sense. Rather than having 150, those 50 units can be sitting there doing nothing. Yeah. No, look, it's an interesting debate. So you worked through there. You did a stint at National Hire, then you did it at Coates Hire for a bit. Yep. You left the industry, and then you got involved with 1300 Temp Fence. Yeah. And so what was the next step after that?
So 1300 Temp Fence, I stayed there for 10 years. So when I first was there, I think we had 30 Ks on hire, I think, in total. I think when I left, it was 600 and something. And it was, wow. Yeah, 1300 was an extraordinarily formative experience for myself. I learned a lot about myself, learned a lot about who I was as a manager, who I was as a leader, who I was as a person. Watching that business grow and being part of that business grow, it was incredible. Like, it was like doing 100 MBAs. We did stuff, especially early days. It was just renegade. We just see ball, get ball. We get a phone call. Can you do this? Yep. We didn't know if we could do it. We just said yes and just figure it out along the way. There was a story that when I was ringing around. This is how naive I was. Ambition was a combination of arrogance and naivety. So when I first started at 1300, I just rang Lendlease and Leighton's back in the day and all those, and Abbey Group. And I remember when I was at Coates and National, I was like, oh, you can't touch those because all the major account managers, you know how protective they get. Like, oh, you can't touch it, that's my account. No, I've got relationships with Tomo, Bill, and I was like, all right, whatever. And so I thought, oh, well, this is my time to sort of get these relationships. So I rang up Lendlease and spoke to this guy, Mark, and we got one job out at Furniture Gully. It was like a little 30-metre temporary fencing job. It's weird, the things you remember. And we did it, and he was really rapt, and I went out there and visited the site and, you know, over-serviced it. And then 2 weeks later, he rings me up and goes, Ash, I've got a job for you. I said, oh, yeah, cool. He goes, we've got to do 60 schools for Julia Gillard's BER projects. I'm like, oh, yeah, we can do that. So I walked into Marty and Bruce's office, the directors of 1-300, and said, I think we're pretty well screwed. We've got to do 30 schools, 60 schools. And anyway, it got even more challenging because I turned around and I said, oh, actually, temporary fencing doesn't quite work because it sways too much. And it's at schools, Lendlease is very, very safety conscious. This is even back in 2008, 2009. Can you come up with a solution? I'm like, yeah, 100%. We went back and well, I got no idea what the solution is. So we literally bought poles from DJ Palmer's, these galvanised pipes, rammed them into the ground at the front of the yard, with no dial before you dig, so we could have ended up anywhere, and attached the panels to it. We're sitting on the back of a ute, mind you, so, you know, there's this, back then we would have got sued. And sitting on the back of the ute, ramming these poles in, last bit of manual labour I did there, don't worry about that, and did that, put it all together, and went, stood there, shook the fence. Yeah, I'll stand up. Went back, how much do we charge? I don't know, let's just chuck $10 a metre on it. Went back to Lendlease. Yeah, we can do it. We've got this new system. It's fantastic. I had no idea if we could do it. It's $19 for 16. It's $19 a month. $19 for 16, whatever it was. And he turns around and goes, "Yep." It was like it ended up being like $300,000 worth of work.
Wow.
But it's really set up the business. It really took the business from being...
But I think there's a lesson there that came from you over-servicing that tiny little job. There's a little like clue there for how to win big jobs and like build rapport.
It's amazing what you do when you're hungry. And you just... When I started it, they had no idea how to sell fence. I had no idea how to sell fence. The traditional way to sell hire is you go to site, you build relationships, you grab the subbies list, you build relationships with the plumber, the electrician, the fire installers or painters. You sell all the, we can get your scissor lifts, we can get your jennies, we can get this. Temporary fencing is so different because once it's on site, you're not getting rid of it. So I had to figure out quick smart, how do I sell this thing? So I had to get Cordell's or get the Wednesday newspaper, go through, ring up, I'm Ash from 1-300 Temp Fence, and they're like, where? 1-300 Temp, I've never heard of you before. Is that like ATF? Yeah, mate, it's like ATF. And so,
what an insult is that?
I know, you just got used to it. And but you just got to keep pushing forward. And so, really sort of over 10 years, sort of grew that business, be part of growing that business, not just myself. There was an amazing team around. And as we grew that business, we just kept that can-do attitude. And then when we got to the major projects in Melbourne, same sort of thing, just rang up John Holland, Lendlease, and got on them. And that really took the business to a whole nother level because it also increased their safety, increased their way they worked, increased our operational capacity, increased our service level. It was just, and made us, when I was there at the time, a much better company. It's really helped that business really go nuts. And by the way, I'm not sitting there saying I was the man or I was national sales manager and all that sort of stuff, but mate, it took a village to get to that place to where it is now. So.
Yeah. Did you hear that, Bruce? He said it was all himself.
I know. He tells me all the time, oh yeah, this is why you... Bruce, relax. No, in all honesty, it did. I made promises and I sold the dream and they delivered the dream. So it really took sales and operations to work together in a real a real concerted way to get.
So it sounds like when you first joined the industry, like you didn't even really know what you wanted to do in
no
life,
idea.
and then like you really matured a lot over that probably 15 years.
So I'm still trying to mature now. No, it's true. I said to you before when we were sort of talking before the recording, was hospitality, hires like hospitality, it's really hard to get out of once you're in it. But you can actually find your opportunities there. Like there's people that I know that are in really good roles that you wouldn't have that opportunity to be in that type of role in a normal white collar corporate environment. It's a very unique industry, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I don't mean in a derogatory way. It's a unique industry. It's full of characters. It's full of really smart, intelligent people. Although that they might not be, MBA, McKinsey level, people, but they trust their gut instinct and they're scrappers, and I love that. I absolutely love that. It's just roll the sleeve up, have a go, you know what I mean? Have a real go in it, and it seems to be that, I would say 9 out of 10 people I run in the hire industry, I would have no issues having a beer with. The other one, whatever. They know who they are.
So then what happened after 1-300 Temp Fence then? Like, was there a progression into another role?
So what happened was I got to year 9 of 1-300 Temp Fence, and like my 9th year anniversary, and I sat there and went, I can't do 10 years. I thought if I do 10 years, I am stuck here. And jokingly, I was always called, Mr. Temp Fence. And it's like, And ambition is an amazing thing sometimes, and it can sort of blind you a little bit. But I looked at it and went, I want to do something else. And to be fair, the business didn't need me anymore, and I didn't really need the business. They were bringing in some really smart, intelligent, motivated people. And I was going through a bit of time of transition, like most businesses do when you're growing, and there's growing pains. And I love the fact where it is now. I really do. They've gone through literally hell and back with fires and everything else. And the fact that it's where it is now and it's a powerhouse is incredible. And there's an enormous sense of pride. But I look back and go, okay, that was a chapter.
Yeah.
And that sort of started a year before I left there. And I started going, I can't stay here past 10 years, because I knew I'd be stuck. So I met with a recruiter that I knew, Sam, Ripper bloke, who's part of Empiraa, and we'll touch on that in a minute. And had a coffee, and then he brought me onto a business called Jumbo Corp, which is a little waste management business based in South Melbourne. And a lot of people are like, what are you doing? You're mad. You've gone from a business of 120 people, you're a national sales manager, this, that, and all the other. And I just wasn't having fun. And I was probably burnt out and probably not a great person to be around because of it. And that probably showed. Because I couldn't get past the fact it wasn't that little renegade company anymore. I love rolling the sleeves up and just getting the shit done effectively.
Yeah.
But then when you sort of have to sort of go into a little bit of corporate governance, and have you spoke to this state manager about this? Have you spoken to this? Get these people on board before you do things. So no, I just want to do things.
Yeah.
And but I understand that there's a world that has to happen, and I understand why that has to happen. Just at that time in my life where I was, I just didn't want to.
Sure.
And so then I left and went to Jumbo Corp, which was, I went there for 15, 16 months and learned about strategy and learned about small businesses. And but the funny thing was, and I spoke about this to one of the guys at 1-300 the other day, because we're onboarding him with Empiraa, cheap plug. And everyone's just talking about just everything. And he was there when I was there. And I said, it was weird because I left there on my own volition. They were fantastic to me at the end. It was looked after me on the way out, all that sort of stuff. And Bruce is a great mate of mine to this day, right? And so is Paul Sass, who's the general manager there. And I left there more bitter, but I was the one that broke up with him. If that makes sense?
Yeah, okay.
And I couldn't understand. I said it was almost like asking for the divorce, but they're getting pissed off that you're getting divorced.
Yeah, okay.
And I couldn't reconcile that for years. And I not that I spent much time on it in the last 12, 18 months, I couldn't care less now. But it's probably more of, I put so much into it, and all I walked out was with some annual leave and bonuses. And I think that's what it was in the end. And then seeing a business thrive without you can be an extraordinarily humbling experience and can really leave you vulnerable and like, hang on a minute, you guys can't survive without me. Well, you can, because you just spent 10 years trying to make the company do that. And it took a level of maturity in that of myself to sort of reconcile that and go, hang on a minute, you're a good business.
Yeah,
you're flawed, but every business is flawed.
But that's probably a little bit of your entrepreneurial self starting to come out. You realizing that you want to have an influence in a business and then be rewarded as part of that business as well, and all that sort of stuff. So then how did the Empiraa thing eventually?
So the Empiraa,
when was that first thought coming through?
It actually started originally in 1300. They'd have these things called future direction meetings where they talk about the strategy, right? And I know for a fact that it was a 2-hour meeting. If you polled everybody what was said in minute 1 versus what was said in minute 120, they would have forgotten. 9 times out of 10, most people did it, and they were more interested in getting back to work. And I thought, there's a real disengagement in strategy. And then one of my biggest gripes at the time about 1300 was there was no clarity. We didn't know where we were going, which was a little bit counterintuitive to what I was sort of saying. Oh, let's just do stuff. But I kind of wanted to get to a point where let's do stuff that we're planning to do. Let's be proactive versus reactive. And I think that's a challenge for most businesses these days, no matter which business. Then when I went to Jumbo Corp, we did all this incredible strategy work. And Jumbo Corp was an interesting business actually. It's I'm not into burying people or anything like that, but there was a lot of talk and no action. It was a small business, well funded, which always, when you got too much of a safety net, sometimes that's a bad thing. And we sat there and did strategy, and we talked strategy, and we did offsites, and we got this incredible strategy pack from this company. And it was a PowerPoint presentation and an Excel. And I'm like, hang on a minute, we did 2-day offsite, and all we got was a PowerPoint presentation in Excel. And it's, go figure it out. Go execute it. Well, you know what's going to happen. 3 months later, we're still going, how are we, where are we at with the strategy? And I'm like, no, so I went out and looked for a product. I'm like, I've got to find a product. There's got to be something. And I couldn't find anything. I couldn't find anything at all. All I could find was project management tools like Workday, Asana, Monday.com. And that weren't working. Salesforce had nothing to do with Zoho. Whatever. And I'm like, there's got to be a product here. And so, and kept spinning the wheels at Jumbo, and it was middle of COVID, so probably wasn't exactly happy with the move, but I was happy I moved, if that makes sense.
Sure.
But I knew there was something that I was going to do. And to be fair, I was speaking with Bruce quite a bit during that period as just a mentor-mentee relationship and helping me sort of try to figure out what I was going to do. Because it's very hard to divorce yourself from a business from 10 years and then go and go somewhere else. It's like if you ask someone that's been in a relationship for 10 years and then the next girlfriend's always a traditional, or boyfriend is always a traditional, like it's a short-term thing. Same sort of thing with Jumbo. So I went, you know what, I'm going to probably move on from there. And spoke to a couple of different hire companies, ironically enough. And then COVID comes along. So I pulled back the conversation, stayed at Jumbo because it was safe money at that point. One of the rare ones that didn't have to discount my wage, which I was thanks for that. And then I got approached to go to TAXIBOX, which was I looked at their as a general manager there, and I looked at it and went, the branding, the marketing, this is awesome. I had no idea how to sell it because I was starting a whole new division, the commercial division, but ended up creating some really good relationships with the people from, believe it or not, TFH. Yeah, Roy Dutt is a great guy. Brett Thomas, Owen Thomas, Carolyn. I used to wear the opposite colours, like Bloods and Crips. You know what I mean? Like I used to wear the opposite colours. It was like the scene out of what's the name, Australia Compton, where they're sitting there with the blue and the red, do-rags. But and built some really good relationships with container companies and did sub-hire agreements. And but at that point, the Empiraa train was working. It was going, and I was sort of wearing two hats, which is challenging in itself. But it was it was interesting. It was interesting 3 years past 1300, let's put it that way.
And so talk me through the point where you had the idea, where you went looking for software and you couldn't find it. Like, how did you action it? Like, what did you do? What was the first thing you did?
Yeah. So Sam Custer, who I spoke about before, who was a recruiter, moved into an incubator called Hyper, based in Bondi down the road. And I rang Sam, and Sam's like the most positive person in the world. Like, he can be raining shit around him, and he's just like, hey, going, yeah, no, it's a great day. I was like, and I rang him and said, Sam, hey, I've got this idea. I've been looking for this strategy platform. I can't find one. And I knew he moved into this incubator that helps you formulate your ideas, helps you get the prototype up and running, helps you with building pitch decks and all this sort of stuff. And this is before sort of tech got really sort of, obviously tech's on a little bit of a downward swing now. People are going, what are you doing? It's like, well, actually, we're pacing, we're getting in a good spot right now. But it was just on that, when working from home started kicking in, and people were using Zoom and more SaaS products than ever before. And I'm like, there's a product here. And then I spoke to a few people I know and said, do you reckon there's a strategy product here that could help you sort of tie in everybody in your organisation, give clarity, also have enough security to sort of, there's some strategic stuff that you don't want to tell people, which is fair enough. And I spoke with my friend Janine, who we're great mates from 1300, and we're like brother and sister. We follow cats and dogs. It's hilarious. And I said, well, you reckon if we had this at 1300 back in the day, you reckon we would be able to? I showed her the concept of what I was doing, and she goes, yes, this will solve some problems, just communication and clarity and that sort of stuff. Anyway, so I rang Sam. Sam and I sat down and started the Hyper Incubator, and it was interesting. It was one of those formative moments where you didn't even realise. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go do this and then see where it goes. But I knew as soon as I left 1300, I was going to do something, and I had no worries about bouncing around for a bit. I know some people saying, oh, you're going to bounce around. So I just trusted the process.
Yeah.
At that point, I was like, I know I'm going to do something, but I don't know what it is just yet.
Yeah.
I know that sounds ridiculous.
Yeah, no, like, as I was mentioning earlier, I feel like maybe you got that entrepreneurial bug at that point in time.
Yeah.
And then you knew that you wanted to itch it, but you didn't know how to itch it, and then you needed someone to facilitate almost through that incubator to almost be the light to guide you in the direction.
And that's been the sort of, since that journey started with Empiraa. Initially it was called Empiraa, but I forgot I actually spelt it wrong. Everyone's going, it's Empiraa. I said, what are you talking about? My wife goes, you've spelt it wrong. You've dropped an I. And I said, And it was talked about me being detail orientated. Can't spell the own company, and I found it right. So, what hope we got. But I knew I was going to do something, but I knew I had to let go of any preconceived notions. And very similar to what I did with hire back in the day, I didn't know anything about the hire industry. Nothing. Pubs, when I did that, I knew nothing about the pub industry. What I needed to do was just sit there and be the dumbest person in the room. And just, I had the passion. I knew what I wanted to do. Like, I knew I needed to build this platform. Regardless if this platform makes $1 billion or $3, I knew I needed to make this platform. And I sort of led down that road, and then I put the work into it with the hyper guys. So every time that, they had questions and answers and doing creative sessions and that. And it's so challenging that we're a head as a general manager or a head of sales, as well as sort of trying to build this thing off to the side without them bleeding into each other. And then especially when it starts formulating the idea, having that, I'm not a person that goes out and has affairs, but it's like having a wife and a girlfriend in another family. Yeah, it's so hard. So that's, not that I know what that's like, but
it's an interesting topic I want to talk about. So not the wife and the girlfriend.
Oh yeah.
But we can go down that path if you
want. My 2 wives and my 4 girlfriends won't be happy with that. But anyway,
no. So you were working at TAXIBOX full time.
Yeah.
and then you decided that you wanted to go on this journey where you wanted to start your own company to solve strategy through SaaS. And you got linked up with Sam an incubator.
Well, it was actually Jumbo Corp, but then I moved halfway through. But
So how did you go about having that conversation with your manager about like telling them how did that?
That was interesting. So Jumbo Corp didn't know because I was, to be honest, I was out the door because I just whatever, and it was about 3 months into the Empiraa journey at that point. And I didn't really know, to be fair to TAXIBOX, I didn't really know where it was going. I knew it was an idea, I knew it was a pitch deck, and raised a little bit of money, but I reckon most of the early investors turned around and said, well, I'll never see that ever again. That's the money I'll never see. And then when I went to TAXIBOX, about 3 months into TAXIBOX, Empiraa started to really look like, well, this is going to be something. Like, I've got the first cut of the pre-development. The algorithms are set. The business model is starting to take form. We've got some real heavy hitters in, the former MD of Xero is on the board. We've got a former sales president of Zendesk on the board. So we've got, a guy from the CFO of Carpet Courts on the board. So suddenly it's like, oh shit, I've actually got something here. And so I'm like, well, what do I do? I didn't have enough money to pay my own wage. I didn't have enough money to live off at that point. Like full time. I didn't have 200 grand sitting in the bank going, oh, well, I'll just go do this for 2 years and see what happens. And I just bucked up and I spoke to Jeremy, who was one of the co-founders at TAXIBOX. I said, listen, I've got this thing potentially. Mind you, bear in mind, this is, looking back, I'm insane. It was 3 months in to a 6-month probation period in the middle of COVID. And a guy that was on a good wicket with them as a general manager, their first general manager, mind you, has come to them and said, hey, I've got this little side project going on. I don't know where it's going. So it caused a bit of angst. I'm not going to lie. But to Jeremy's credit, especially Jeremy, and Jeremy's a fantastic human. And he goes, look, we're not super excited by this, but we see the value in what you're doing. If you can just give us at least 12, 18 months to help set him up. So I did that. And I gave him another additional 12 months on top of that. So we gave him 12 months in total. So, and his thing was always, if you can give me 3 months notice, if you are going to resign, it allows you to replace you. And don't let it bleed into each other. So at that point, it was like, okay, I'm on the watch here. I've got to make sure that all my meetings are either late at night, on the weekend, public holidays, sneaky phone calls at lunchtime, but try not to let it bleed in. That is extraordinarily difficult.
Yeah.
Whilst trying to manage another business.
Because you've got all your KPIs and goals for one business that you're doing, and then you've got this baby that you're trying to brew in another thing. And if you don't give that attention, then like Sam's probably on your back wanting you to do more. And so, yeah.
And you've got to work doubly as hard at TAXIBOX because I was open and honest and told them what I was doing.
Yeah.
So suddenly, because if I wasn't, just say every time that we weren't getting sales or every time things were falling over or whatever, they'll be going, well, it's obviously you're spending too much time doing Empiraa. So I've given them a fallback excuse. So I kind of put a target on myself or made it harder for myself, but I felt I had to do it because going back to the 1-300 conversation, I left there bitter, annoyed, and still didn't know why I was bitter and annoyed. But I also left there immature, which is ridiculous as a 40-year-old man, immature, but whatever. I wanted to make sure that I was doing everything right. I wasn't cheating on TAXIBOX. I wasn't doing the wrong thing. I was keeping everything above board. If that meant I lost my job, I would have just driven Ubers. Yeah. I would, you know what I mean? I would have just, and you know what? Some people would have taken the piss out of it. Oh, Ash has gone from this, and now he's now doing. I don't care because I knew what my purpose was at that point. I really want to get in. There's two purposes. One, I wanted to get TAXIBOX launched at what it was doing with the commercial, which I believe I did that, and helped the people that were there, and especially a couple of the people in my team. Jordan, who was fantastic and helped mentor them. So I had to repay their faith because that was the right thing to do. and I wanted to do the right thing by TAXIBOX. And to be fair, they did the right thing by me. In the end of the day, they allowed me to. And as soon as it got to a point where I could resign, I sat there with Jeremy, had the conversation. He was not bitter one iota. He was awesome. He goes, Ash, I know you're more of an entrepreneur than you think. You want to do bigger things. I thank you for setting this up. And I love the fact you were honest with us.
Yeah.
So there's probably a lesson there, but it takes maturity from the business that you're working with, and it takes maturity from also the investors at Empiraa to know that, okay, I can't work on this thing 24/7 during the work days, but I can work on it during every other waking hour. And that's not including I'm married and had a 17, 18-year-old daughter at the same time. I was toilet paper thin, spread that far, and ironically, COVID, there was no toilet paper anyway. But I was that spread that thin.
Yeah.
That I couldn't. I'm still tired from that.
Yeah. So there's probably a lot of people listening thinking, what the hell is an incubator? so maybe we should just talk about that for a little bit and give Sam a little bit of a prop of what their business is. So what is an incubator?
So an incubator, they foster ideas. So they help incubate the ideas. So you come in with an idea and you sit around the table drinking beer with your mates. How many ideas come up? Oh, we should build an app that does this. We should do this. Okay, cool. It's great to have an idea. Okay, cool. How are you going to commercialise that idea? How's it going to technically work? What markets are you going to put it into? How are you going to get investment? What type of investment are you going to get? That's where Hyper really come in. How do you commercialise an idea? And one thing I really like about their model is they actually really help you go and form the idea. And even if it's not the world's greatest idea, they really help you put it together, and they take you on the journey to let you, because you're better off in some regards spending the 15, 20K with them to find out if it's a bad idea than spend 5 years of your life and go, well, I just wasted hundreds of thousands of dollars and 5 years of my life trying to build this idea that was Tinder 2.0.
Yeah, and it's, you're working with people that every day are working with other people that are trying to set up ideas, so they sort of know the playbook on what is required.
Yeah, and what they've done, especially Sam in particular, like I couldn't have done any of this without Sam, because Sam opened up his network. Once again, this industry, this rental industry, is based off networking. That's what sub-hire is about. That's what the hire rental show is about. That's what, all these things are about. Just ring Bill from Coates, here we are to hook you up, or just ring, Roy from TFH or Paul from 1300, because there's all these networks. And when you walk from an industry like what we're talking about now into tech, it's an emerging industry, so there's a lot of new people getting into it, to have that access to someone that actually had Richard from Airtree, David Kenny from Hall Chadwick, Mark Hogan, these sort of people that can pick up the Rod Moynihan, Trent Ennis, to be able to pick up the phone and go, hey, I've got this guy that's got this idea, you want to have a bit of a chat with him? I wouldn't have known who these people are. I would have reached out to him on LinkedIn, hello, my name's Ash, can I please pay for a coffee for you? And they was going, who's this idiot? And it would have gone nowhere. So they had and that's what Hyper did. Hyper actually accelerated the product for Empiraa.
You know what I hate when I get those messages on LinkedIn? Virtual coffee?
Oh, yeah. What's a virtual coffee?
Virtual coffee.
Oh yeah, I
we'll sip coffee together on Zoom.
I get hit up so much on LinkedIn on all, we can help you reduce your costs. You don't even know what my costs are.
It's just a template. They're just shooting out.
And to be fair, we probably do it too. Week, nudge.
So all right. So now, you've gone through, you've fostered your idea. You wanted to start a strategy SaaS product.
Yep.
Now this is probably your opportunity to plug. Like what is Empiraa today then?
Yeah. So Empiraa is a strategy execution platform that's put together to help small to medium businesses, pretty much up to sort of 150 to 200 employees, align and collaborate and engage around strategy. So rather than sort of sitting there going, another PowerPoint presentation, another Excel document, you turn around and look at it and go, okay, cool, and I'll just file that away and never look at it again. It actually gives your strategy a chance. So we've got a strategy designer. I mean, you've used it, and it helps you go, what's my vision statement? What's my core values? What are my pillars that are going to hold up this business? And then what are my KPIs and OKRs and objectives that sit underneath it? And what it does do is it broadens the conversation of strategy versus sort of keeping it to like, it's just in the founders. How many businesses have we all worked in and gone, where are we going? What's the strategy? And people sit there, I speak to Marty. It was like, well, that's not great. So it really engages the user and engages the business in strategy. And what it does do as well, it shows what their impact is. So why a sales rep's doing 30 calls a week is because you're helping the business achieve higher sales, which means if there's higher sales, that means that we can open more branches. We open more branches, that means we get greater buying power. If we've got greater buying power, we get better. It shows the actual impact of what you're doing, because there's nothing worse than coming to work and going, why am I doing what I'm doing? And our platform allows people to actually understand the why.
Yeah, so maybe I'll give my take on it. Since I used the product, it'd be quite interesting. So I started the Rental Journal podcast a couple of years ago. I had a goal that I wanted to be full-time on it and push it through. And I had goals that I would write on whiteboards and I would sort of do stuff. And I wasn't really sure. I didn't have a mission statement or anything like that. But as I wanted to get more serious, I needed to think about how could I actually make this financially viable for me to be full time. So to do that, you've got to start like actually finding objectives and achieving those objective goals to then actually do something. And then there's layers to it all. Yeah. And it was funny. So I would start putting all this in spreadsheets on my whiteboard. So I'd sort of write it down there and I would sort of cross it off as I did it. And I couldn't really like reflect on what I had achieved without actually just looking at like my bank account, really. You know what I mean?
And that's what everyone does. Everyone says the measure of their success is my bank account. Is it?
Yeah. So that was sort of where I was at, and then we got connected through. Sam. I think Sam. Yeah.
Sam's like the bloody clips all power board, mate. He connects everyone.
So we got connected, and then. You organised for me to get access and then set everything up. And to be honest, like I think I set up everything for my strategy for the Rental Journal podcast in probably 30 minutes. Like it was a 30-minute process of sort of putting in. It made me sort of think a little bit outside the box on like what is actually our value? Like what is the value of like what is my core value for the Rental Journal podcast? And it's like giving back. And so, but then it's about visually seeing those objectives one by one as well. Yeah. And then rather than me ticking it off on the whiteboard, or someone comes to me and says, I want to employ someone and I want to communicate my strategy and my vision. It's, I've got this product called Empiraa that I can actually show you. You can see what we're working on. So that's sort of where I'm obviously a very, very small business, but that's where I've worked at like other businesses where the strategy's been on PowerPoints and everyone's got an excuse under the sun or they didn't hit it. Yep. And so now it's accountable, it's there, it's public, everyone can see.
And that's the other side of it too. Like for me, honestly, where it first started was the real germ of the idea was I wanted to help businesses. I really did. At the end of the day, I want to help businesses become smarter and more efficient. And that's the purpose of the business. The purpose is to help businesses be smarter and more efficient about their businesses. Turn the lights on in the rooms that they didn't even know they had. You've got employees in your teams that you didn't know there were stars until you actually start going, here's your KPIs. And you're just going, holy crap. Jasmine's like knocked down all her year's objectives in 3 months. And the quality works there. So, and then also turns on, it allows you to adapt and allows you to course correct as well, where sometimes you can set targets. And what happens is, and this happens especially in high-paced environments like rental, right? Because it's a high-paced environment. Bill rings up, you've got in and generator tomorrow. It's like, all right, I'll get it to you, mate. To find out that some of the goals that you're setting are just ludicrous. but you're getting frustrated because you're saying to your branch managers, we need 75% utilization on all equipment, and it always falls down, right? So you get 60. You're like, why are we not getting that? Well, you can actually see the reasons why. Well, because of this, because of the reps, because you don't have enough reps in the area, because there's now a flooded market. So you're starting to understand that not necessarily people are underperforming, but there's some actions you can make as a business to help course correct and support those people. And I think that's really important. It's really easy to blame and point fingers and go, oh, that person's not doing their job. Okay, show me why they're not doing their job. Oh, well, I can just tell. No, you can't. Give me evidence.
Yeah, it's like looking in the yard and picking the utilization number.
Yeah. I mean, but going back even further, I really wanted to build it for founders like yourself, right? My dream for Empiraa is, honestly, this is 100% true. You're a one-person podcast right now. You now know what your vision statement is. You know what your values are. And now you're off whiteboards and things. You go back to the video, you'll see a big smile on my face because that's exactly what I love to hear. And I hear this from people. Like one person yesterday turned around and said, this is saving me 12 hours a week in managing people because I set the KPIs out for them. I don't spend 2 hours a day working with them and they're knocking things down. I'm actually working on my business, not in my business. And I'm like, that's the stuff I love. I love hearing that. But the goal is, so you go from being a one-person podcast to being the Joe Rogan of this crap, and at Joe Rogan of podcasts in rental, and you've got 20 people working, and you've got 5 different little podcasts going because you are working efficiently, you're working smartly, and you're focusing on what matters, not focusing on the things that don't matter.
Yeah, it's interesting, but so we're talking about all the positive things that have happened.
Yeah.
And I think
there's negatives.
And so I also want to touch on, like, it's not all roses when you start your own company, yeah?
No, it's not.
And so I want to make sure we talk about, like, what it's actually like to start your own business. So, and look, there's starting your own SaaS business, which there's no attainable asset that you need to buy, like a generator.
Yep.
So obviously it's a little bit different, but from someone that was lost in their career at that one point, you said you were immature at the age of 40 and went through to then now be the founder of a company that's gone through raises and has raised money to significant people. Talk me through the emotional roller coaster that you've been through so far.
If you want to get humble and you want to learn about vulnerability, you start your own business. There's nothing more. You never be more vulnerable when you ask for money, ever. And it can be for a business or it can be for work. If you want to borrow $20 off a mate, you feel like crap. Oh my, can I borrow $20? Because there's almost an embarrassment to it. Times that by 200,000, times that by 500,000, and you go, oh Jesus. So what you're doing is you're having conversations with people that you barely know, and you're saying, "Can I please has money? This is my plan. Is on a PowerPoint presentation. I swear I know what I'm doing." And underneath you got no friggin' idea. But you know what you know where you want to go, but you don't know how you're going to get there.
Yeah.
So you're flying blind. So if you like being perfect and you like being super detail orientated and you don't want to feel stupid, don't get into this. It's even harder. If I was going to start a rental business, I can go to the bank and say, I've got Kabuto, I can get 4 16-ton excavators or 12-ton excavators. I need $500,000. I want to rent them out to customers. And the bank looks at it and goes, okay, cool. We understand because if it goes bust, we can sell the gear and recoup the costs. When you're talking about a SaaS product, you're talking about something that's
vaporware.
It's nothing.
Yeah.
It's really nothing. Like now it's something, obviously, but so you've got to try to engage people that get it. It's tiring, 100%. You are tired a lot. It's not in a bad way. It's not like, oh, so I go to sleep. It's just like you go from this to that to this to that to that. You wear 100 different hats. you are not the friend that you should be. You're not the family member you should be. You're not the father or the husband you should be, because you dedicated so much to the idea. And you know, I'm lucky in a lot of respects. But like on my way here, I was talking to my good friend Janine, and this is a perfect example. We've been playing phone tag for 2 weeks. I literally got hold of her 10 minutes before I came up here, and then from here I've got another meeting, right? And we used to speak half hour a day, and she's barely getting 10 minutes with me over 2 weeks. And she's got a new kid, and I want to know all about that. That's the stuff, unfortunately, you're sacrificing.
Yeah.
So there's sacrifices there. There's people that probably sit there and, actually I know this for a fact, they sit there and go, oh, he doesn't talk to us anymore, or he doesn't do this. It's not because I don't want to. It's because my time right now is so damn precious. And it doesn't mean that I'm pushing people completely to the back burner. What it means is right now I've got to focus on the things that are going to help the business. I'm now a slave to the business. The business is king in my eyes right now. I have to service and honour that idea as much as possible. What's really hard is at the first is getting it to this point. And then as we're going for a raise and we potentially raising a few $1 million, it's going to be a little bit easier because I'll have more people on board and able to sort of distribute the workload. But it's not easy running your own business. It's not easy starting something from completely nothing. And I know some people have said, oh, he's crazy. This is early days. I've back channels. Oh, no, he's got no idea. He doesn't know. I've heard every excuse. Doesn't know anything about tech. He's got no idea. He doesn't. Who does he think he is? Where's his turtleneck? It's Steve Jobs jokes.
I love that one.
Yeah, where's his turtleneck? He's bonkers. He'd be broke in a month. He'd be begging us for jobs. Heard everything. If you allow that to slow you down, then yeah, I wouldn't have been able to do this 5 years ago. I would have been.
So how do you turn off all that negative talk?
5 years ago, it would have crushed me. Honestly, I would have gone because I was so obsessed with what people thought of me, and I think now, this will get used as something that sounds like incredibly arrogant, but it's not meant to be. I know what the purpose of what I'm trying to do, and I know that if I worry about the opinions of everybody, then I'm not going to achieve the things that not everyone achieves. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I've got to sit there and go, well, yeah, okay. I listen to a few people, don't get me wrong. I've got a very core group of people that I will listen to them intently. But I'll listen to most advice, to be fair. I'm not. But if you're going to go, oh, you're this or you're that, whatever.
Yeah.
I just don't care anymore.
I think it's
I probably didn't answer the question properly, but yeah.
No, you did. So I was listening to a podcast with the founder of Coinbase.
Oh, yeah.
And
is that how I built this?
Sorry?
Was that how I built this?
No, I think, who was he on? He was on Lex Fridman's podcast.
Oh, yep.
He's probably been on a bunch of these.
Yeah,
they usually go on tours and they do well.
Yeah.
But so...
I'm going to Yabby Chatfield one after this.
I thought you were going on Joe Rogan.
Yeah. You're going to smoke joints with Elon Musk and it's going to be awesome.
So then he was talking about like the struggle of the negative like influence from so many places, and just he never expected it to be so draining to his mental state as a founder.
Yeah, it's probably
and the fact that like you've got to have people around you that can pull you up and forward.
Yeah.
Otherwise, because everyone always finds the negative and stuff.
Tall poppy syndrome, man. I'm not too bad with the negative stuff right now because I think probably because I've just gone through life. Do you know what I mean? So I've learned to put the BS filter up a bit. But there's times I doubt myself. But then I realise I'm the energy well. It just sounds ridiculous. But when you're a business owner, people look to you for answers. And it's ridiculous. Sometimes I'll sit in advisory board meetings and I've got the ex-MD of Xero there. I've got the ex-president of Zendesk there. I've got the CFO of Carpcore, CPO of Open Universities. I've got I've got bloody Bruce Foraker. I've got these incredibly intelligent, wealthy, smart, savvy people, and they're asking me questions, and you sit there and go, "Is it what?" Like, so the imposter syndrome is really real. I'll say that. That's a big one. Like, sometimes I go, "Nah, this is weird," and then you sit there and go, "Well, obviously they see something that I don't see." But regarding the negative stuff, like, yeah, you just learn to shut off.
Yeah.
And you learn to go, oh, well, if they doubt it, that's on them. And you've got to also look at the situation that person is in. And that's not me being derogatory or whatever. That person could be dealing with wife is giving him a hard time, wants to leave. He could be in financial pressure, or she's like, in certain situations. So sometimes their point of view is not necessarily a reflection of you, it's a reflection of where they're at in their life. So you can't take it personally.
Yeah.
Where previously I would have. I was like, what? And I'd roll up sleeves and want to fight everyone. But now I'm just at a point where I was like, well, I want to do this. I'm going to break through brick walls to do this because the purpose is there. And not, I get people go, oh, you take billion. Not, far from it. Far from it. Like miles, trillions of miles out of the way. But what I am now is I'm happy and I've got a purpose.
Yeah. What about pressure? So taking money from a number of angels or a VC or however you did your raise, was there like was there a pressure and an instant feeling of release as well at the same time? Because then you've got the money, but then it's like, now I have to deliver.
I think the release is there because raising funds is extraordinarily draining because it's like speed dating. Not that that's speed dating, but
you've got extra girlfriends, kids,
I got it all, mate. I got it all. I've got a Mormon. I'm a Mormon on a Amish village. It's. I'd imagine it'd be like speed dating when you're sitting there and you're just having the same conversation. But if you look at it, it's like sales in some regards. I used to do 7 or 8 sales calls a day at 1-300 Temp Fence and go on the hey mate, how you going? Dash from 1-300 Temp Fence. Just to say, hey, your fence is holding up. Jump in the car, fill up a Zoho, off I go. Hey mate, Dash from 1-300. So you sort of get used to repetition, which is sad, but I can still recite how to do that. But pressure is interesting. It's one of the things that I think I'm pretty good at, and I've got feedback. I don't really get pressure. I don't feel pressure. Sometimes I sit there and go, oh, geez, that's getting a bit curly, like burn rates and various other things. But I don't know. I sort of sit back and go, I'm really blessed to do what I'm doing. And whenever you sit there and have a bad day, I always say my worst day here is my best day elsewhere.
I like that.
And that's what I look at. I sit there and go, the days I'm really that's why, I get tired, definitely, right? But that tired is different from dealing with political BS, worrying about restructuring the business, worrying about my bonus, worrying about am I going to pass my probation period. They're different pressures. I get more concerned about that because in some regards I'm probably a little bit of a control freak maybe, but I'm in the driver's seat here. This is my time to shine. If I stuff this up, this is on me.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to give myself an opportunity to stuff it up.
And so going from being, I could say, an immature 40-year-old. No. Going from that to where you are now, where you've raised money, you're sitting in a room of pretty senior people, you've got a company and a product that you own now that you're selling out to people that businesses are using to manage their strategy.
It's still weird.
You mentioned the term imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So talk through that a little bit.
Could you sit there and you go, I know that these people are smarter than I am in various fields. Why are you coming to me? Because I'm just a person that had an idea. Because at the end of the day, a founder is a person with an idea that had a passion to get it to point A. And then they got it to point B, they got it to point C. But they look at you as being the doyen, the guru. what do you want your business to be? And you're like, oh shit, I don't know. Yeah, actually, I actually want this. Yeah. So it's sort of weird. Like I've said before, probably not here, but elsewhere. I dropped out of high school in year 12, got into pubs because I couldn't be asked doing anything else. Probably was a bit of a no-hoper for a while. And then suddenly you're asking me to head up a multi-million-dollar company and listen to people that are worth 50 times what I am and done 1,000 more times than I've done. But you're asking me for advice about what we need to do here. It's surreal, humbling, and bizarre at the same time.
So what changed? Like, what was the moment, do you think, where like the light bulb switched, where you're like, no, I am going to mature. I do want to like have control over my destiny. I can do that. Like, is there a moment that you remember that triggered that?
Probably a series of moments, to be honest. Probably just series. It's probably just a million different little things. And then once I left 1-300, honestly, I really needed to leave 1-300. It was toxic for my own mental health. Not because of them, because of me. I needed to leave. And I think once I did that, and then I started freeing myself from worrying about certain things, and once I did that, I believe that's when the penny sort of started to drop. And then honestly, once I got the Empiraa thing in my head, I was just like, oh shit, this is something I want to do. This is something I had no idea about the valuations. I had no idea about this. I had no idea that. All I knew was I wanted to do something. And do something that's, regardless if this thing makes $1 or $100 billion, at least I've done something. At least I can say, I did this. I grew something that was an idea that I spelt wrong on a paper and launched it. And I've got people using it and passionate about it. Everyone that's involved in Empiraa, we're like 20 odd people that are involved in Empiraa, whether they're paid employees, board members, or advisory board. They're all passionate about the brand, the product, the purpose. And you know, Mark, who works with us, he said, that's all you. And I struggle to see that at times. And that's also talking about the energy well, like because people draw off your energy. Yeah. And so I can't have a bad day. Because if I have a bad day, the people that are dealing with me, working with me, are going to, we've all been, how's so-and-so? Oh, he's in the Brad Pitts. Like, I can't have that. So I'm learning to sort of
protect the staff almost. Like you got to, like if a CEO comes to work and he's pissed off at something and he starts like venting to like the rental coordinator. Yeah. It's not going to really do much for the business, is it?
No. And I feel that that's something that I've naturally known. And this, people will say, oh, I know I'm a leader because I'm a shit follower.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Well, you did say before that you used to be a very bad employee.
Yeah.
Which is quite interesting.
Yeah. It's so funny because I've had people say, you weren't. I said, no, but I was, because I would constantly, why do we do this? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Why can't we do this? Because I wanted to do more than was getting. And to be fair, I didn't see the whole picture. Yeah. So now I'm in the other shoe. I can see the whole picture. And it's probably a control thing, in all honesty. I probably sat there and go, well, I needed to be in control. And there's nothing wrong with being in control, but also you've got to learn when to succeed control. And so I'm very good at delegating. Some people say I'm way too good at delegating, but I'm good at delegating things that I know now what I'm not good at. And that was one thing that I probably struggled with, and it probably caused me problems back at 1-300 days. Was I didn't know, I was trying to do too much. I was trying to be everything. And now I know, like, I've got no idea. I've got a rough idea how our database works. I've got a rough idea how our tenancy works. Certainly know how cybersecurity works because I'm signing the checks. But you know, I know how all that works, but I don't need the detail. I just need to know it's done, and I need to know at a high level why it's done and how it's done, and understand where the gotchas are. Yeah. I don't need to understand how A to B to C works, and how this database tenancy works with this, and how this line of code hooks up to that, more integrated. I don't need to know that, but I've got a lot better. I've got a million times better at turning around and go, well, I don't need to know how to do that.
Yeah. So then what advice would you give to maybe yourself in like your mid-20s then? Like if you could go back and sort of have a chat to yourself.
Just shut up. No, slow down, shut up, and you know what? You know what? I wouldn't give him any advice. I don't live with regrets. Like everything that's happened, it's happened for a reason. Just keep on the journey. You'll get there. And by the way, I want in 20 years, there's that famous Matthew McConaughey quote where he says his hero is him in 20 years. So he wants to see himself in 20 years and say, yep, you're my hero. Same sort of thing with me. I want to just go, not that I'm my own hero. Some people will say no, but it's more about in 20 years' time, I want to say, okay, cool, I got from this point to that point, and I can reflect back on the person that I was.
Yeah.
So
I saw this pretty amazing TikTok the other day. It's crazy the editing they do on TikTok now as well.
I refuse TikTok. I'm not on Facebook.
It is
barely on anything.
It's crazy the level of like production that goes into videos now. But this particular video was of a person that had become a drug addict. So now they weren't actually a drug addict at that point in time, but the whole purpose was like just to pick this story.
Yep.
And it was them in 10 years talking to themselves.
Oh yeah.
So it was going back and forwards, and it was like, oh, so what happened? I was like, oh yeah, you got hooked on this drug, and it was that person talking to themselves about their future self. Yeah. And it was really powerful to see like that. Like that video can depict like yourself, like with your own goals. Like imagine talking to yourself in 10 years and go, I got lazy with Empiraa and I stopped doing it. And imagine like yourself telling you that, how sad you would be. Yeah, exactly.
You've got to keep on yourself, and I think that's probably the other side of when being personally, I hate the word entrepreneur. I hate the word CEO. I'm just doing a job. I'm doing what I want to do, and I've never been a title person ever. I know some people love titles. Some people want to be called general manager of this or CEO of that. Fine, but I'm a purpose person, if that makes sense. And I sort of sit there and I think to myself, how would I look? When you work for someone, you can get lazy. But when you're sort of working for yourself and you're working for a purpose, you sort of lose the ability and the luxury to be lazy. Mm-hmm. And it sounds ridiculous, it's a luxury to be lazy, but you kind of lose that.
I think it's, you know how equipment rental businesses are so obsessed with the utilization of their assets. When you become an entrepreneur, your time becomes the utilization factor.
Yeah, 100%.
And so if you waste that 3 hours in the afternoon watching YouTube or whatever it is, or
God, I wish. Just some cat videos.
So then you sort of lose that like as an employee, it's not as relevant.
No.
You know what I mean?
Well, as an employee, you can go home at 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock or whatever. Go home, have a beer, have dinner, and watch Hunted or whatever you want to watch, and you don't have to worry about it. When you own a business, there's no your clock doesn't stop.
Yeah,
the clock doesn't stop. What I used to, a quick story before wrap up. I knew when I had enough of 1-300 was when on Sunday nights I'd almost get anxiety about going to work. That's when I knew I was done. And that's when I knew I was done being an employee, because to go to work on that Monday was almost paralysing.
So why do you think?
Because I couldn't see where I was going. Does that make sense? So I was like, another week. I was like, okay, I'm just punching the ticket. You know, I've got nothing against anyone that wants to punch a ticket and do the job and go home and turn their brain off and have a healthy life with their family. No issues with that whatsoever. It just wasn't for me.
Yeah, you just had that drive, had that itch.
Yeah, it's just an itch. It's just itch to do something different.
Yeah.
You get one spin at this whole thing, allegedly, and it depends what you believe. It could be 8, could be 1. But you get one chance at this life. I wasn't going to spend it worrying about what could have happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So then fast forward to today, I like to ask everyone how they define success.
Yeah. Legacy. So my success I don't want it to be determined till I'm no longer here, if that makes sense. So if my success means that the future generations behind me are in a really good spot, and that doesn't just mean myself, that also means and my family, that means the people that are using Empiraa, and their families have got better because their family lives got better because they're in control of their businesses. Trent told me a story with Xero. He met a guy at Xero. I met a guy at the Virgin Lounge. Everyone meets at the Virgin Lounge. And a guy walked up and goes, "You work for Xero?" And Trent's like, yeah. MD. But he goes, yeah. And he goes, "Thank you." And he goes, "What for?" And he goes, "Because beforehand, before I used Xero, I was well behind on my invoicing. And when I was well behind on my invoicing, my wife and I used to fight all the time." He goes, "Xero saved my marriage."
Wow.
That's success.
Yeah.
That's legacy type stuff. Success for me is not fast cars, house. I'm a simple man. If I could buy a place in Mount Macedon and just drive, I've got one luxury thing in my life, and it's a Tesla 3. And the other reason I've got it is because as soon as I stopped working for someone else, I had to pay for my own petrol.
Where's that $5,000 card gone?
Yeah. So as soon as I got that, I went, I'll buy an electric car because it's just going to be cheap. So in a tight house. If I've got my dogs, my missus, my daughter, and family around me, and I've got a nice little place in the country, that's success for me in that regards. But overall, a legacy of success for myself, my family, and anyone that's involved in Empiraa. That's more important to me. So
that's awesome. Well, look, I'm take my hat off to anyone that starts a company and goes through that journey. And I'll be pretty interested to get you on the podcast again in probably 3 years. And
speak to my PA. He's got a PA. He's got another bit.
But by that time, I'll be like that guy in the lounge waving to you at the Virgin.
I might be working for Coates again as a sales kid out of that point. So
awesome. Well, thank you for coming on the Rental Journal podcast.
No, thanks, Mark. It was awesome.